Well, for the next couple of weeks, I want to talk the believers doing battle. The believers doing battle. And we're going to look at primarily one passage and kind of tear this passage up a little bit. We'll branch out into other verses for support. But there's a verse that this past year has been really meaningful to me. And my Bible study is not always your Bible study. What the Lord's taken me on is not always what I'm supposed to be sharing. But this one, I finished this winter, and the Lord said, yeah, it's time, share this. So we're going to share some of where we've been in this particular study. Let's look at James 4. The first 10 verses tell basically the story. We're not going to actually look at all 10 verses, but the context is important. The context is important for us to have a total picture. James, the 4th chapter says, "What is the source of quarrels and conflicts among you? Is not the source your pleasures that wage war in your members? You lust and do not have, so you commit murder. You're envious and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, so that you may spend it on your pleasures. You adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is hostility or war toward God?" You've declared war on God. "Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy combatant of God. Or do you think that the Scripture speaks to no purpose? He jealously desires the Spirit which he has made to dwell in us, but he gives a greater grace. Therefore it says, God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Submit therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, you COVID-19 sinners." No, I threw that in there. "And purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be miserable and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned into mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves in the presence of the Lord, and he will exalt you." Amen? Amen. All right. So that is a teaching unto itself, and we have some things we have much to say, some things we have little to say in this particular passage. The first thing that I see in this passage is knowing the cause of the battle. Knowing the cause of the battle. On Pearl Harbor Day, there was no question that war had begun. War had been declared on the United States, who had hoped to stay relatively neutral. Our military, we now know, was divided. Some wanted to become involved up to their eyeballs, and some wanted to become neutral and stay out of the fray. Which is right, which is wrong, I'll let you take that. But the fact that we became a world power because of our stand for what was right. And even though we did not know fully, perhaps, all that was going on to the Jews in Europe, the Bible still stands true that he will bless those who bless them. And he will curse those who curse them. And even unwittingly and unknowingly and innocently and naively, when we went to Europe and began to save the Jews, we were on the winning side. No matter how naively we were, we did it. No matter how innocently we did it. There is no doubt that the minute we took that step, we went into another realm as a country in the spiritual realm. Now, isn't it amazing how 2 generations later, we can be bailing out the airplane without a parachute when it comes to that. But knowing the cause of the battle, the cry, remember the Alamo. Remember the Alamo. We know exactly what that means. And a very small band of Caucasian Americans and Indians and even Mexicans stood and rallied an army and became a nation against an army, a huge Spanish-Mexican army with gold and military and all the armament behind them. But the cry was, we know what we're fighting for. Pearl Harbor, we know what we're fighting for, right?
Right.
9/11, we know what we're fighting for. And so knowing the cause of the battle is important. No one wants to go to battle not knowing what the end outcome is. Let's face it, we began what I believe was a noble war in Southeast Asia that became politicized, and the politicians lost their way. It does not mean that the war was wrong. It does not mean that we shouldn't have been there. I believe there was an oppressive force that was there that needed to be set back. And I grieve that our soldiers were not rewarded for the job well done.
Period. Period.
That's it. Just a job well done. The fact that the leaders lost their way is what happened.
Right.
So it is important that we know the cause of the battle, isn't it? It's important that we know what's going on. And that we don't want to go bomb a country just because we don't like them and they haven't done anything to us.
Right. Correct.
If there's terrorism, we need to get the terrorists. If there's a nation that supports the terrorism, we need to go after that nation that supports the terrorists. Why? Because we know the cause of the battle. Okay? But you just don't go beat people up because that makes you bully.
Exactly.
So knowing the cause of the battle is important. And I believe that too many Christians are unaware of really the cause of the battle. I believe that many Christians are afraid to stand in battle because they're really not sure, they don't have that clear trumpet call of what it's all about. And so I think James helps us with that. So let's look at the first two verses. Let's look at those. We'll get about that far tonight maybe, and we'll see. Verse 1 says, what is the source of quarrels and conflicts among you? Is not the source your pleasures that wage war in your members? You lust and do not have, so you commit murder. There's 3 steps there, aren't there? You're envious, cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. So what is the cause here? We've got quarrels and we've got battles going on. And when we look at this first verse, look at the very first verse, the word quarrels there, the word quarrels is very simply understood. It means war. Quarrel is the most namby-pamby word that can be put in here. It really truly means an armed military skirmish or battle. Okay? So why is there warring among us? Why are there battles among us? And the second word there is the word conflicts. Now why do you say 2 different things? Why do you say quarrels and conflicts? Couldn't he have just said it once?
Yeah, it must be.
Couldn't he have just said, why is there problems y'all are fighting? You know, why are y'all fighting? Because the word wars is what we're doing. Conflict means to fight a war. So one is the noun, the other is the verb, okay? And so we have the quarrels, which is the war, and we have the conflicts, which is the fighting of the battle. So look at the verse, understand that one is a noun and one is a battle. What is the source of the war and the fighting of the war among you? Okay? So it's one thing to know what the war is, but it's another thing to know why are we fighting.
Oh, yeah.
It's another layer. You see, here's the war, here's the why we're fighting. And so James is hitting these on 2 points. And he says, is not the source. Now, there ought to be a question mark there. I mean, remember, there's no grammar, there's no apostrophes and all of that stuff. Punctuation is the word I'm reaching for. There's no punctuation in this particular language. Neither the Hebrew nor the Greek have punctuation. But is not the source, pause, your pleasures? You know, your pleasures. Is not the source of the battle your pleasures? Now, what do our pleasures do? They wage war, same word, by the way, as quarrels, in your members. So we have this cycle that says, why are you fighting? Isn't the source your pleasures? And your pleasures are causing the battle. So we have this circle that's being drawn in the very, very first verse. Your pleasures. All right? And so it's pleasures here. The word there is hedon. Does that look like anything you know? Hedonistic, yes, of the flesh, of the desires of the flesh. You hedonists, you know. What you want to do in sexual flesh and drinking flesh and partying and bacchanalia and all of the different desires of the body that says, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. You know, the whole concept of if it feels good, do it. Yeah. If it itches, scratch it. That's it, you know. And so the whole idea of itch and scratch and all that stuff, especially when it comes to sex, hey, if you and I feel good, if we got an itch to each other, let's just bed down tonight, let's have sex. Open sexuality. Hedonistic. The desire of the flesh. One of the things that was argued by the Greek philosophers with hedonism is that there were those who believed that animals and humans were of the same grouping, and there was no distinction between the two. And so if an animal has an itch, it scratches it. And there were those groups who said, oh no, there has to be something different between animals and men. And when men reach down into hedonism, they have taken their lower level into animalism.
Shut up. You become.
Gosh, welcome to the 21st century.
Yeah, it's all around.
The 21st century. The Greek scholars were arguing the same thing, and that's because the devil is not at all creative.
No, he's not.
The devil has not a creative bone in his body. He didn't create anything, never has created anything. When he finds something that works, he just cycles it back around and cycles it back around and cycles it back around and cycles it back around. And so hedonism is one of those things that today we have people that say man is just a part of the animal kingdom and should just enjoy the same things as the animals. And others are saying, but there has to be a distinction between the two. And the difference is the hedonistic style of the animal. And should not be the same. Right?
No.
So hedon.
Right.
And are they not from here, it says. Look at that verse. Are they not from here? Is not the source of your pleasures that war against the measure of your members? The pleasures waging war against members in the Greek reads as you see it on the screen. Are these desires not from here, from your members? James is drawing a distinction here that we taught somewhat in depth a year ago, and that is, it's not the enemy, it's the inner me that we battle. More battles and more sins are committed because of what my flesh wants to do, what my spirit wants to do. Now, I grew up with Laugh-In, Rona Martin's Laugh-In, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And Sammy Davis Jr. saying, here come the judge, here come the judge, order in the courtroom, here come the judge, right? And what did Flip Wilson say?
The devil made me do it.
The devil made me do it, yes. And unfortunately, the church has swallowed that line, hook, line, and sinker. Believing that we are but puppets on the end of a string, and that if we give God the handle, then we do godly things. And if we give the string to the devil, then the devil controls us. The truth is, we got the strings.
Yeah, we do.
We choose to let God be in control or to let the devil or the flesh to be in control, but we pull the strings. We choose whether or not we are going to live the life of Christ or the life of the flesh or of the world. We choose that. Listen, even the world is discovering this. Even the world is coming awake to this. Even the lost world is coming awake. How many of you have ever seen Choose Joy today? Choose joy. Yeah, I mean, the world is saying, hey, whether or not you're happy or not is pretty much up to you. Choose it. Quit whining, quit complaining. Lost people are saying that now. That understanding how much control man has over his own destiny. The Bible's been saying that for thousands of years. But we've been standing on the sideline saying, the devil made me do it. The devil made me do it. No, the devil didn't make me do it. I chose to do it. I choose. And so when the Bible says, are they not from here, it's a way of saying, do you understand that the temptations that you're having don't come from there? They don't come from out here. Most of the temptations that we experience are coming from in here. They're from here. They're earth. They're flesh. They're among us. How many of you know that depression is a choice? Most people think depression is a dark, black blanket with arms and legs that sneaks up in the dark when you can't see it because it is so dark. And the blanket looks around and goes, I'm going to fall on you. Be depressed. I've been covered with a blanket of depression. It's out of my choice. It's out of my will. It's out of my control. No, it ain't. Even the world of psychology admits today, I can show you a line and verse, that about 20% of the depression in the world is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain, and therefore needs a chemical to fix it. Needs a med to fix it, because the chemistry. Now, if the world admits that 20% of the depression is chemically induced, it's admitting that 80% is a choice.
Well, there you go.
Isn't it? If it's not the chemistry, then it's the choice.
Right.
And I have said for years, get in a lot of trouble in class for this, but that's all right, I'm right. So the teacher, I mean, I got kids. I mean, they're kids. They don't know what they're talking about. They're in class to learn. I've learned it. I could talk to them about it. And I've got a lot of depressed college students. I got a lot of depressed single moms coming back to school trying to better themselves. God bless them. Do everything I can to help them. Want to help them. They are fighting an uphill battle every day in class with kids at home and trying to work. If anybody needs help, they need help. But how many of you know that they suffer from a lot of depression? And so when I tell them that depression is a choice and they don't have to be, I'm not always their friend.
I hear you.
I'm not always their friend when I tell them that. That's right. Depression starts out as that dark, silent creature of the night that sneaks up on us and covers us like a blanket. But after a while, it becomes the really comfortable quilt that Grandma made and bequeathed to us. Guys, I'm struggling right now because I've got some shirts that I like to wear when I'm working in the yard that are so comfortable. But they look like a rat's nest, you know? The seams are coming apart. I lift my armpit, you can see it, you know? I mean, I got holes and spots all over it. I'm having to replace those comfortable shirts. You got that kind of shirt you put on and it just fits. It just molds to you. How many of you know that depression can be that?
It can be that.
It can be your friend. It can be your comfort. it can be the one that comes with you, because we choose that. This is something that is from here, not from out there. What is the source of depression? Depression is nothing more than an internal temper tantrum. It's internalized anger. If I lose my job, I will become depressed. Why? I'm ticked. I lost my job. Are you an idiot? Didn't you hear when I said I lost my job? I can't pay the bills. I can't make things work. Now, I could go and scream at the boss. Will that get me anywhere?
No.
So what do?
Scream inside.
I scream inside. I internalize it. I get angry inside. I don't know if you guys know, but I was going to get married this weekend, and my bride stood me up. Had the church ready, had the caterer ready. I think I'm just going to go get a drink, and I'll call you all later. Why? Because I'm depressed. Now, if you sat down and talked to me about the depression, what would we find out that it was? I'm ticked off at her. I'm angry. You see, don't raise your hand. But do any of you have a person in your family that is prone to depression? They're kind of prone to depression. They kind of go that way. I mean, all you have to do is drop a penny on the ground, they're depressed. I mean, if there's a cloud in the sky, they can get depressed. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. People in your family that just kind of go there. That's what they do. They're known for it. You love them, but people don't like to be around them much because. Yeah.
That's right.
How many of those people are just really ticked off because they don't think life is ever going to go their way, and they're never going to get the break that other people get, and whole world is against them, and you just talk to them, and pretty soon you're depressed talking to them, hearing about all their problems, you see? It's a choice.
Yes, it is.
It's a choice. Why do you think that this book, this is representative of the book, says to rejoice in all things, to give thanks in all things, to pray without ceasing, because it is the weapon that will destroy depression.
Yeah.
It is the weapon that will destroy depression. Now, you can make excuses for it all you want to. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Nobody knows, not even Jesus.
Don't, no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And people just think that not even God understands how bad they've got it. And those are the people that are going to live with a little Schroeder cloud over their head, the little cloud. Why? Because, listen, folks, look at verse 1 with me. Look at verse 1 with me. What is the source of the quarrels and conflicts among you? Is it not your pleasures that wage war in your members? Or as it says in the Greek, are they not from here? From your own limbs? The word members there is the Greek word for body parts. It's just the word body parts. It's not any specific part. More often than not, it's interpreted limbs. More often than not, it's interpreted the word limbs, which means your arms and your legs, the appendages. And so isn't what you battle your flesh, is what verse 1 is saying. We're battling the flesh as much as anything in this particular verse. Your members, I just got ahead of myself, the limbs, the body, the flesh is what the slide says. That's exactly what we're talking about in that first verse. So let's think about what we've just learned. Let's think about it. Let's not just get some pretty words out here and get some stories. But how much of the battles that we wage during the day is because we're living too much in the flesh on this earth, trying to get what we want, rather than being the ambassadors for Christ who do what He wants. I mean, we lean back and say, oh, it's so hard being a Christian. It's so hard being a Christian. I lost the remote control to the TV today and had to get up twice to change it manually. Why does God hate me? Amen. Amen.
Why we had kids.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's
Channel.
yeah. God created teenagers for that very reason, yeah. And so how many times do we moan and groan when in fact we're supposed to be doing battle? Can you imagine an army that sits around and complains because of the color of the shoelaces on their boots and won't go to battle? That's a pretty good comparison to what we do sometimes. Well, the second verse begins to give us examples. He said, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, okay? What are these pleasures that wage war in your members? So the first thing I want you to see, he says, is lust. You lust, okay? Now, we're not supposed to lust. Lust is supposed to be outside of us. It's supposed to be apart from us. We're not supposed to have that. It says you lust and you do not have, okay? Lusting is in your mind. It's in your imagination, right? You do not have means, why isn't my wife look like that? Why doesn't my husband look like that? Why doesn't, this happen in the bedroom? Why doesn't this happen sexually? Why doesn't this happen? How come there's not more adventure or whatever? Suddenly it's in my mind, I'm imagining something, I don't have it. I don't have it. And so I choose by my will to commit murder. Now remember, Jesus made it very, very clear that to commit murder did not have to involve bloodletting. Murder does not have to involve bloodletting. If you have hated in your heart, you have committed murder. Where is lust in the mind, then an act of the will, and then the flesh gets involved. You see, he's telling us how the pleasures of the members come about. It starts in your head. Yeah. Now, I really was excited when God said, teach this, because this is like the second rail in the train track for Sunday morning. Sunday morning is hearing from God, right? Yes. This verse says, what about when you hear from the flesh or the devil? Lust. Lust. How many marriages have been torn apart because he or she felt that they weren't getting the level of attention from their partner that they deserved? I'm not getting the level of attention from him. And so she finds someone at work that will give her the attention. Where does that start? In the mind. It starts in the mind. The whispers of the devil that say, you deserve more, you deserve better. You deserve better, you deserve more. And today, in the 21st century, more women will get their advice from a whole group of divorced women at work than any place else around the water cooler and lunch, right? Let's go talk to all the losers who never won a medal in any sport and lost it all in their marriages, and let's ask them how to be successful. We're going there. We're going there. Don't get ahead of me. You know me by now, Sherry. It's just that when women will go to other women who, forgive me, I don't mean this in a pejorative way, but are basically losers in marriage, and get their advice. Okay? Get their advice. then we know that we've already got a problem, right?
Yeah.
And how many men? You know, we used to say when I came to town, I came as the singles minister at Emmanuel, and it was at the huge oil boom of the late 70s, a huge oil boom, when struggling guys with beat-up pickup trucks were millionaires like this. And Emmanuel asked me to come be the singles minister because there were so many women being dumped by their husbands for younger women, you know, being dumped for younger women, you know, dropping the 40-year-old for 220s, and we had to teach those guys they were not wired for 220.
That's right.
Exactly.
Most of them were not wired for 220. They were going to burn out, you know?
110.
They just couldn't handle it. But, oh my gosh, we had divorces in the church. We had divorce, and I'm divorced. You know that I've been through a divorce. I went through a divorce quite young in my life, but these were divorces of lust.
Yep.
These were divorces of lust. These were men who were trading in the women who'd stayed with them in the poverty and the hard times when there was nothing. And now that it's rich, they're being kicked out of bed for floozies.
Yep.
And boy, they loved it at Emmanuel when I said that, because some of them were the congregation.
Yeah.
Some of them, the wives left the church and the man and his floozy were still there. Well, excuse me for calling them floozies. But so was the man. The man's an adulterer. Let's call it what it is.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
So what happens? It happens in the mind.
Yeah.
Happens in the mind. I remember
Lay down to the devil.
counseling a deacon in our church who had not committed adultery, but had fallen out of love with his wife and was falling in love with another woman.
Okay.
She was not a member of our church, she was a member of another church, but he came to me and he said, I'm going to get a divorce and I'm going to marry this woman. Will there be any problem with me being a deacon?
That was more concern.
Yeah, I think there probably is. Yeah. Now let's talk then. Let's talk, what are your grounds for divorce? Well, she doesn't listen to me. She doesn't care. She shows no concern whatsoever. There's nothing happening in the bedroom. I've lived with a 4-year headache, he said.
Yeah.
She's had a headache for 4 years.
Coffee.
I said, and what have you done to give her that headache?
Yeah.
What have you done? Seriously, I mean, what have you done to give her that headache? Treat her like a queen, she'll treat you like a king. This guy came back a couple of weeks later and said, I'm in deep trouble. And I thought, uh-oh. I said, what do you mean you're in deep trouble? He said, the other day, I spent an hour in my car sitting across the street from where the girl that I like works, hoping to catch a glimpse of her if she came out the door. Now, folks, where's that at? In the mind. You see, he is fantasizing. She is fantasizing. They are fantasizing how cool it would be to be in bed with this person rather than this person, and what could happen with this person rather than not happening with this person, and how it's going to be so much better with this person that...
Yeah.
How many of us know that in second marriages, they end in divorce a lot because we brought our same problems into the same marriage with us that we had in the first one. And then they go into a third one, and a fourth one, and a fifth one, and he's always blaming her.
Nothing wrong with that.
The only thing that is common here is him. He's bringing his little valise of problems with him into those marriages. You see, it's all in the mind that it begins. It's the imaginations. It's the thought that begins. And James here is trying to show us that. He says, you want to know how this works in your members? Let me show you verse 2. The first thing you do is you lust. Now, if I could lust after a Mercedes and walk outside in it, be there, case closed. Case closed. It's done. I'm not going to enter into sin, am I? I lusted. It showed up. But how many of you know that imagination and lustings don't get us anywhere? Nothing is accomplished. I want it. I don't got it. Now, what do I have to do to get it? I kill my marriage. I commit murder. I kill the other person. I kill the relationship. I kill any chance for success that can possibly be there. It all starts in the mind, doesn't it?
Yes.
The second example, very quickly, we've made the case. Look at what he says. Look at verse 2 with me. You're envious and you cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. Envious is what? My mind. I sit back and think, how come I don't have what they got?
Right.
How come I don't have what other people have got? How come they do that? It's all in my mind. And I fantasize and I work it up and I think about it and I kick it around. And I'm like a 8-year-old with too much energy and a soccer ball. I'm kicking it up and down the field and running around, but I'm doing it in my head. And I'm envying. Does envy get me the Mercedes? No. I can't obtain it in this fantasy because it's not God's will. It's my will, which then is the will. And so what happens? Begin to fight and quarrel. I fight with my neighbor. I fight with whoever has what I want. And suddenly, relationships are broken down because it follows up in the flesh. So the mind, the fantasy, the will, what I choose to do.
Yes. Yes.
In closing tonight, I told you we'd get 1 and 2 done. Remember, I've said this for the last few weeks. This is just a recurring theme of discipleship. I'm never ever going to get through telling you this and never say it again. Okay? It's just going to be a part. We have to be reminded of it. I have to be reminded of it. We have to be reminded of this. That the person who is depressed stays depressed because they don't think they have the willpower to overcome depression. When the only willpower they have to do is to say, I will. But it's too easy to say, I can't. I can't. I can't do that. In my marriage counseling, we can't use the word can't. We don't use the word can't because I'm counseling Christians. And if the power of Christ within me allows me to do anything, if I can do all things through Christ, then I'm asking you, what is it that you cannot do? And why do you use the word can't in your mind to excuse your behavior?
Yeah. Getting personal.
It's not that I can't. It's that I won't, which is the opposite of will. I will do it. I won't do it. I will do it. I won't do it. Not I can't. I choose not to do that which I have the power and strength through Christ to do. I choose to do it in my own source and in my own power, and to enjoy the depression, to enjoy the sin, to enjoy the envy, to enjoy the lust. So he gives us a couple of examples there, okay? He gives us a couple of examples so that we can understand that this is us. This doesn't have anything to do with the devil. The devil may light the spark,
Yeah.
but we blow on the fire.
Yep.
And so he ends verse 2 with this: you do not have. Which is the middle part of both of these, isn't it? I'm fantasizing because I don't have. I'm fantasizing because I want this and I don't have this. And he said, you do not have. Why? Because you do not ask. You see? If I'm lusting after what I want, if I'm envying after what I want, then I am not asking him, oh Lord, what do you want?
Amen.
What do you want? Yeah, I told you, 'cause, Carol and I are very strong personalities. We got married late in life, She already had the girls, and she's a strong personality. I'm a strong personality. We have opinions. Oh, let me tell you, brother, we got opinions. And there are times when I know she's considered weaponry in our marriage. Right? I know that she's thought about weapons in the marriage. And I know that there are many things that I've thought about in our marriage when we're fighting, that it's not pleasant. But we always come back to, did the Lord Jesus put us together? Yeah. Then I'm choosing to work through this. I'm choosing to accept you as the gift that God brought to me. And it's my flesh that's battling, not you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It is an act of the will rather than the won't, which is excused by the I can't. Not enough you wrote that down. That was really good, okay? We're going to have to watch the tape again. That was the Lord there. That was really good. But anyway, so that's where we leave off into, okay? We've got 3 and 4 ready to go, but I knew we'd probably spend most of tonight in 1 and 2 laying the foundation of what is the cause of our battle. The cause of the battle is more likely more than us wanting something for us that the Lord does not want for us. He doesn't want for us, okay? Well, I think we ought to circle up and grab hands. What do you think?